Peters is from Consensus, and Brian said to me, I work for a blockchain company. And I was like, oh, blockchain. Is that like a supply chain management, something like that? And he's like, oh, kind of, but actually it's like the technology that's underneath of cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin. And at that point, I'd only known Bitcoin to be this internet currency, didn't really understand it. But then when Brian started to expose me to actually what blockchain technology was, that's what really started to blow my mind and kind of started my journey in the space. At the same time that Consensus opened in the office, coincidentally, so did QuantStamp, the company that I work for now. And I was extremely lucky to be in the right place at the right time to meet the right people. Not only did I come into this blockchain industry at the right time, but I met the right people. This, like I said before, is 99% scam, and I was lucky enough to meet with some of the good people in this industry to start my pathway in that direction. And ever since, I've been learning about blockchain, and it's been an insane amount of learning. And I've been extremely lucky and fortunate to grow up in this region, to go to University of Waterloo, to have been with this job, to have met these people, and now to be going down this path and learning all this information. And so this was all of my goal was to take everything that I've learned and kind of bring it back to the community that gave it to me. Waterloo is a very unique place, and we have great people here. And I chose these people to be a part of this panel because they are exceptional people in this industry. I've done a lot of due diligence and research on all of these people, and I love the aspects and perspectives that they bring to this, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't bring any scams to you, and all of these people bring a vast amount of experience in this industry. So I'm very pleased to introduce all of them to you. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, so if you can just give your name, the company you work for, and maybe just like a 2-second blurb about who you are, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Krishna. I run a business at QuantStamp. I would like to thank David for putting this really nicely organized event together, and thank all of you guys for coming as well. All the panelists and everyone who spoke, and obviously you guys, the audience.
Thank you. My name is Graham. I work with BDO Canada. We're a professional services firm. We do audits, tax and advisory. I'm an auditor, so when I hear things like 99% scam, I'm the guy that has to figure out the 1%, which is kind of terrifying.
Brian Peters, gateway to cryptocurrency for Dave here on the stage, as mentioned, and so I'm working with Consensus currently. I had the pleasure of working with MyoVision for a number of years as well, and I'm very interested in human systems. So what drew me to Consensus is a global incubator for Ethereum startups, now over 50 projects underneath, as well as a consulting arm that's supporting incumbent industry and government in transitioning to the space and exploring the space. But I was fascinated with the human systems aspect of cryptocurrency and how it can find novel ways to bring humans together to work on a project and incentivize them to work collaboratively, even though they may not know each other or trust each other.
Hi guys, I'm Jack from Bloggeeks. I'm actually a Waterloo alumni, so it's great to be back here and get back to the community here. So I'm a developer at Bloggeeks and also an educator as well. So what we do at Bloggeeks is have education and training materials to basically bridge the gap between Vitalik's mind and the general population.
Scott from Bitcoin. First of all, I should mention, despite the name, we do not have a coin. Basically, we work with the Ethereum Foundation, with the Ethereum Community Fund to fund Web3 infrastructure. And at the same time, basically, just the platforms that we allow anyone to take the GitHub issue and allow you to fund that issue in any ERC20 token. So this is meant to be sort of a way to incentivize open source and grow open source software.
Awesome. So generally what we got here, we have, I think, a wide spectrum of business right into tech. So I'm hoping that we can give a good spectrum of information regarding the industry as we see it right now and where it's going in the future. So one of the first questions I want to start off, we've been pretty technical so far tonight, and we've talked about a lot of things. Blockchain has a lot of future applications, and many people right now, we look at it as a currency, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, but there's actually a lot of other applications to blockchain that are coming out. And I kind of want to know, what are the applications you are excited about? What's coming out in the future other than currencies, beyond that you are excited about, that you think blockchain is going to affect?
So I'll start. I'm pretty biased in this, obviously, given the project, but to me, I think there's a lot of open source software that's really developing as a strict result of this kind of increase in openness in the ecosystem. So you started off in like the 80s with mostly proprietary sort of hardware and software, and slowly that became more and more open source. I think for the first time we're seeing most of the stack that people are using, all the way down to the actual applications, being pretty much entirely open source. So to me, that is a really important development that actually this entire ecosystem is spurred. And to me, that's actually the most relevant to where this industry can actually add the most value.
Yeah, something for me actually I'm excited about is like something in real estate. So for example, right now we can basically buy everything online. You go on Amazon, you can purchase things. You can go on Tesla's website and pre-order a car. But for properties right now, it's really hard to get into. And I myself is going through the process of looking at places actually in Toronto, and it's such a pain point. And I feel like there's a lot of logistics and a lot of regulations and rules you need to overcome. And I feel like if the blockchain space can disrupt that space, it's really like a wise, kind of like a killer app that really makes it easy for people to purchase properties all over the world. And that would, you know, open the case to more mainstream adoption.
That's an awesome one. Yeah. For those who might be interested in that one of the projects in the space related would be Meridio. Very cool. For me, I'd say it's a tough pick between governance and self-sovereign identity, but I'm going to pick governance. I think blockchain brings forward the opportunity to create very sort of rapid and fair decision-making methods. And so there's a lot of different sort of crypto-economic games that are out there that are based on theories that have been around for quite some time in terms of voting and putting forward proposals and ratifying them through some state machine, or curators being incented to curate a good list of subjects or rank a good list of subjects. And I really think that this could transform how we organize, collaborate, make decisions. And so I'm a big fan of that.
I'm going to give two, if that's okay. One from work and one personal. From a business point of view, we have a lot of clients that do things that are very paper-based. They've got systems that don't talk to one another. It's all quite inefficient. So really hoping that things can be made more efficient that way. I was hearing just yesterday that restaurants need to use 13 different payment systems and need something like 46 different certificates. So something like that is a great example of how you can maybe build a digital identity and make that much more efficient for them to do business. On the personal side, I believe this is something that Consensus might be working on, but you know, I'm an aspiring musician, or maybe at my age you could say I'm a failed musician, but I'm quite excited by the idea of cutting out something like Spotify. And I don't know if you're aware of how much money Spotify take, and they don't really do anything. They don't create any content, they don't create any music. So there's a real opportunity to use blockchain so that artists can actually receive money directly from their fans. And am I right in saying that Consensus have partnered with Imogen Heap, who's a UK songwriter, to try and, I don't know how far along that is, but I think that's quite an exciting possibility.
Yeah, so I think one use case that I'm really excited about is peer-to-peer finance. So a lot of the developing world actually doesn't have access to financial products that like we do. They don't have access to microloans. They don't have access to any sort of lending, and we can help create global networks that people can tap into, where they come from economies where there's mistrust with banks, there's mistrust with governments. I think, for example, in developed countries like Canada or the US, people take their trust with institutions for granted, so it's really hard to see on the other side where someone actually doesn't have that trust. But now, instead of being walled off by living in a sanctioned country or whatever, they actually have this access to a global network of credit, and it plays into reputation systems that now can follow transactional reputation, or reputation that's created natively in the digital world and is not mandated by for example, government identity. So there are a lot of new interactions that can happen that have never been possible before without this technology.
What about in the aspect of human identity? I've heard some interesting applications about that. Is anybody here looked into the aspect of human identity on a blockchain?
I think identity on a blockchain or identity in a digital world is very different from the world that we're used to, where identity is, like I said before, mandated by the government, where you get an ID and the ID is sort of validated by the fact that the government has endorsed it. But I think in this world, just like the way we transact every day with each other or transfer value to each other, we're sort of we have our reputation and our transactional reputation. We're basically the sum of all our transactions, so we can create completely new identity systems based on that, which have no sort of relation to the previous identity systems that were basically government IDs and systems endorsed by the government.
Right. Graham, so from your perspective, when clients come to you or come to BDO and they have some vision of blockchain in their future, what do you find, what are they approaching you with? What do they see?
So one of the things you have to bear in mind is that a lot of our clients are not technical people. So they might have heard about blockchain and they've got some idea that they could use it in their business, but they don't really know what that means. So the first thing we do is walk through, what do you know about blockchain, and why do you think this is something that could be used in your business? Is it an industry that could benefit from having some sort of shared database? Are there intermediaries that could be cut out? Do you have transactions that are conditional on one another? Do you have any ability to influence people in your industry to kind of get together and kind of work on something collective? And often if you work through it, they might need something that's not blockchain based, it could be something different. So we're just really kind of trying to work through those problems with them and figure out what the best solution is. And then at that point they need to decide what they want to do. Do they need to partner with a company like a blockchain development company can do it? And so it's really just trying to guide them through the process.
Do you find yourself telling people they don't need blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of a number of options, right? I mean, they might just need some sort of automation within the business. It might not be blockchain based.
Right. How about the rest of you? Do you find you're talking to a lot of people that are just adding blockchain on their business because blockchain is a new hot topic?
Yeah, I mean, I'd even say that I fall trap to this. When you start to see a new tool in the tool shed, I mean, for example, I picked up a chainsaw the other day, an electric one, and I felt like everything needed to be chainsawed in my backyard. Some things that, frankly, a hedge trimmer or a manual trimmer might have been better suited to. And I think, really this is just a new technology, and software engineers have been facing this for quite some time when it comes to all the different options that are out there when you're building a software stack to produce some solution, some end value to the customer. You could design a Rune Goldberg machine, aka use blockchain, like I use my chainsaw, or you could look at it pragmatically and choose the right solution. So I think, yeah, people are excited. There's a bit of hype in the space, and the result is like me with my chainsaw on the first day.
Yeah, I would just add that, back in the day, this is a natural problem with hype cycles. I mean, for a while everything was SaaS, for a while everything was cloud. These are just buzzwords. You have to actually dive deep into what the use case is and what the particular application is to understand whether it's relevant in your particular business. And that's really important, not just for this particular case, but in general when it comes to technology.
Yeah, I would just add to that, whatever your business is, focus on solving an actual key issue for your customers instead of trying to plug some blockchain into it just to make it sound cool. And like you mentioned, you actually value the technology to see if it actually brings any benefits to your business or not. If it doesn't, yeah, don't do it. And don't ICO.
Valuable point.
I heard there's this cool thing called a database, and you can build a lot of cool things on top of a database. So it's a really cool technology that I'm really excited about.
Good. So there's something else interesting that comes out of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Something that I'm just starting to learn about, and the more I learn about it, it's interesting me more and more. And it's tokenomics. It's a little bit different than crypto economics. And in this industry, sometimes we're hearing them interchanged, but they're a little bit different. Crypto economics is sort of how we can encrypt and keep transactions secure and encrypted, but token economics has more to do with incentives and game theories, and how these tokens actually are utilized, what the utility is behind these tokens. At first, to me, that sounded like, okay, this is just how a token is used in a network, but then actually, as I learn more about it, there's more implications of how you can actually manage people through tokenomics. So there's something, and I'm wondering what you guys can see in the future of these tokens and blockchains and tokenomics. Can you reflect what can you see coming in the future and how that can maybe impact society or organizational structures? And how can that make sense to the general audience?
I mean, I can start this one. I think Scott probably has some great things to say on this too. Yeah, I think there's, I mentioned governance is something that I got excited about. That is a token economic game. And there are many ways in which you can play this game. And what's happening right now in this space, which is really exciting, I think Curtis said it was, kind of like 1996, if we're thinking about the internet era as an analogy, well, the same thing's happening here in terms of the types of games and the game design. So you want to make an efficient decision, and you're going to use a token to start to incent people to make those decisions. And so you can design different types of games, and some of the neat games that are emerging, and people are trying to figure out how to apply them and like which real-world applications they work in. But right now, we're just designing a lot of different games and starting to experiment with them. And so, for example, one might be a prediction market. It's effectively like betting on an outcome, but it's a way of making a decision. If people are staking money to make a bet in a certain direction, versus choice A versus choice B. Who wants to bet on, this company here, company A or company B? And we make a prediction on the directions of those two different companies in the exact same space, and we make the prediction, and that's effectively where the investment goes. We're all in there, we're staked, and we win or lose based on the success of the choice. So that's like a prediction market kind of setup. I apologize if I kind of like hacked that example. And then there might be other games still around decision making, like a token curated registry is another game that's played a lot lately and it's got a bit of buzz. And that's the idea of, let's imagine a lot of different proposals coming forward, like in government, for example. Which one should be put forward to the next stage? With a token curated registry, you could have token holders whose job it is to decide whether a proposal passes the merits of whether it should be on this list or not. And so they could be, let's imagine it's like a finance committee and they're all experts in finance and they are economically incented to vote when a candidate comes forward or a bill or a proposal, whether this is good financially or not, as in this example. And so they're going to vote for or against the proposal and they're effectively staking and they're playing a giant game where they're securing this list, not unlike the crypto economics securing the ledger. And so they secure the list against its purpose, and they are incented to do so, like it's a job. Now that can get pretty fascinating, right? You could take that game and start to ask the question of, well, could anyone, be an elected official if they became informed and had the rest of us delegating our vote to that curator, and the curator was doing the work on our behalf, and yada, 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 you can get pretty excited about what might happen there or how it might blow up in our face. And so there's many of these, and I could just drone on and on all these different ways in which decisions can be made from, voting, multi-sig decisions, these token curated games and token ranked lists. And I think this is probably a pretty darn fascinating way to make decisions in a decentralized way instead of traditional power structures where this is the decider elected for 4 years. This is the, the board of directors. It doesn't rotate. It is. We can get more dynamic and match the dynamic nature of our world.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered a lot of the key points. I think the only thing I would add is just on the level of like, you know, staking is an extremely interesting sort of economic mechanism. I think what we're seeing now is a lot more people moving towards, for example, like inflation funding for the projects. So tokens will be generated for actions, and then staking will occur with those tokens for particular actions. And you'll basically get this continuous cycle of people being incentivized to participate in the network rather than just holding tokens for various actions. And I think that's really important because historically, a lot of tokens were just bought up by like people who then just held them and didn't actually use the network for its intended purpose. And so we're seeing people recognize that and start to adjust their economics in these models like accordingly, which I think is important for the future of the entire ecosystem pretty much.
Yeah, just one thing is that I think this area is really fascinating, like system design thinking. I think this is one of the areas where we're lacking talented people in this space, and I think we'll definitely encourage you guys and people to look into this more. And I think if we can come up with a good system with good incentive and good economic theories behind it, we can actually promote behaviors in a way that is beneficial for everyone.
I actually just want to also shout out to a book called very blandly, Algorithmic Game Theory, which is just like a book literally about what it sounds like. And I think a lot of this stuff that we talk about, like when we talk about it in terms of token economics or cryptoeconomics, often comes back to subjects like that. And I think it's important for everyone to sort of have a good grounding in those particular subjects, especially as these sorts of economies emerge, as things start to become more networks and less companies. So I just wanted to mention that.
I don't have too much to add to what was said, but just to pick up on a couple of things. I'm a guy that's worked my entire career into very hierarchical organisations, very kind of power-driven. There might be the board of directors that are 3 or 4 year terms, and I just think it's quite fascinating to potentially move away from that and have people incentivised based on their actions. I mean, it's something that we've been hearing for a long time, that people coming through want more responsibility, they want more decision